Hello and welcome to the next lesson in the series. So in the previous lesson, we covered up a couple of things. And now in this lesson, I want to tell you guys just one thing I missed in the previous one. So remember how I told you that the mirroring it could cause it to be flipped in the negative axis. So if you just see this here, I am actually going to use this, and you will notice that it's kind of like scaling it. And as I go in the negative one, hold on a second. I'm just doing it slowly so you guys can see it. You will notice how the value is being negative. It's just pushing them in the other direction. I kind of try to do it manually using that the editable poly mode. But as I'm doing it here, you will see that it looks like the model is mirrored. To make it perfectly even, I'm just going to set it to -100. It looks the same. Like it's just mirroring it. That's what the mirror tool literally does. And then it has an additional offset property that moves it. But if I just set this to like, this is literally what the mirror tool does. It inverts your model, like stretch inverts it. We don't want our bone to stretch because later on it causes a lot of problems. So that was the one thing. Okay, so in the last lesson, we covered up until the bone object tools. The next thing we will need to know are the fins, what the fins are for. Okay, so I will just enter my front view, come over here, and delete this stuff we made earlier on. I'm just going to delete these. And then finally, what we are going to do here is create a simple bone and just leave it. Oh, my bad, I forgot to turn that off. I don't really need it to be a solver, so I will just turn that off in the bone properties. Assigned to children, I'll just turn that off. We don't really need it. What this is useful is for that it creates one by default. You guys will know it when we learn animation constraints. So again, I will create the bone. Okay, I'm still in bone creation mode. Click. And okay, we got ourselves a bone here. I will exit the mode. I will select this bone, come here, and we get those properties. So, and they're the same properties as those right there, except these ones are showing up in generic units, which are inches. So if you have a different unit other than inches here, this will always show up in this unit inside the bone tools. That's why it's important to work inside inches or generic units. Remember that because like one generic unit equals 1 inch, we already covered that up in the first video. So you will notice something. As I go in the negative direction, the bone here is also changing in the negative direction. That's one of the reasons that we do not use this, the mirror thing, because it kind of like inverts your bone. That's one of the reasons I told you earlier, because when we mirror the bone in the other side, you have to like literally recreate that bone on the other side. So, and it kind of like increases your work. These can be used to like adjust the width as well as the height. Like if you want to use the bone for weight painting, like let's say, uh, not weight painting, sorry, skinning, like you want to use the envelopes, which like the bigger your bone is and closer to the polygons, those polygons will be covered in the weight of that bone. If you want to use that, then this is good. Like if you're trying to make the pelvis or something, like this same principle can be applied to anything. For example, this same bone, okay, my bad, I got it out of focus. Like, let's say that this same bone, you want this to be a hand bone. You can make it a hand bone by changing the values. Like, let's say I do this right here, and I can increase the width and the height like this, and then this. And so, yeah, it can like, it looks like a box now. That's not how game bones look, you guys might be wondering, but this type of rigs exist. Like, usually that's how the normal bone channel looks. But over here, it's like very different now. Like, it's extremely different, as you can see right here. Yeah, so like you can give your bone shapes too if you want, okay? That's perfectly fine and okay. There's no problem with giving your bone a shape, okay? But most people like to rig using this. As you will turn more professional, you will get used to it because sometimes this can be a bother, like really a bother. Okay, so I will just reset this back to normal values, which was 90. The width, I forgot the height and width. I'm just going to leave them to 1 and 2. Okay, yeah, here's our big bone, and it's back to normal. So remember, you can shape them. These side fins, these are usually used for determining the sides, like how much closer they are to the polygons. In this case, let's use this existing bone from the previous lessons. Let's use that one, and let's turn on the side fins for that. Okay, I'm going to turn them on, and you will notice that it kind of looks like a dart. Wait a second, where's the orbit? Okay. These kind of like help you determine how much closer they are and how much area that envelope should cover up. Like you can choose this, the size. It will determine like how much radius that envelope should have, okay? So you guys can also add it for like ease of access for your selection. But if you're not going to use envelopes, then your bone size, even if it's like this, the bone on the right, the small one, that size is perfectly fine. This one does not matter. It's only usually used for that, okay? And the front fins, and we have a back fin because these are like different. Only the side fins are like that because usually the width, like our bicep, it is determined like that, okay? As you guys know, we will like place it in the top viewport, so the bicep is like that. So our front fins right here, sorry, our side fins right here, this will be the side, this will be the top, and that area will be the bottom if you look at it right here. Because we will make that in the top viewport, so our bicep, like this will be the side, that will be the front, and that will be the back side of the bone. Like in this case, like the front fin is this, the front. So in this case, it might be the top one or the bottom one. You guys get the idea. Or maybe the bottom one. So it's usually used for that. You guys can like choose the tapering end, like change it. You can even make it like this if you guys want to. It's entirely up to you. You've been given the freedom to like completely make it the way you want. You guys can thin these out, make them thinner, adjust them, scale them, or like whichever way you want them to be, okay? Like there's no restriction on this, where the taper should start, where should it end, and other things. So this is usually what this is for, okay? That's what it's like usually for the skinning part. Okay, now you guys know about the bone properties. Next thing we will learn about the bone edit mode. Uh, and another thing, we have the absolute and relative values. So let's say that we have two type of bones, like this weird thing I made here. Of course, it's not accurate. I'm just gonna do copy here, and I'm just gonna come right here. Absolute means that it will just take the value, like if it's not a negative or something, like let's say this is negative 90 or so. Absolute kind of like rounds that value off, okay, and kind of makes it according to the other side bone. Like it kind of like if you mirror bones, it kind of ignores that. And relative is like it copies the exact value as it is, including the negative mark. Absolute is it just takes that and copies it on the other side. It was usually used for mirrored bones, but sadly it's not been updated in 3D Studio Max for quite some time, especially the animation tools. And I will just paste this here and look, we get exactly that same thing that we had there and it's copied here, but you will notice that those bones are clipping into each other. So you got to be careful about that when you start working. Okay, with that done, I will delete all these extra bones and show you another thing when we start our work. So I will come here, another shortcut you will learn now. When working with models, usually your default selection is an all. Here are the three things you will need to know. Bone, IK chain object, and point. These three, helpers and warps, okay? Sorry, not warps. Helpers, bone, IK chain point, and point. These four, remember. Like right now, I just want to select all the bones because you will notice that I was doing that on purpose to teach you guys that when I kind of like select this, I drag select it, then do that. That can be extremely annoying. You have to come here, choose bone only, no matter now how many times I click on this, Drag it, it won't select. It will only select the bone. I click here, bam, bone selected. Control control page down, delete. Same thing, choose any, just control page down, delete. You guys can also use the schematic graph. Just choose the root bone, control page down, delete. Before doing that, or yeah, we can just create a new bone for that. I'm just gonna delete it. Same thing, you guys can also drag select and delete it. It's the same thing. Okay, I won't close my schematic graph. I will just collapse it. Now only our model is left in our scene. Another thing I kind of missed, I don't know if I covered it. Yeah, reassign root. So you guys know about the root bone now. One last thing we will do here really quick is I'm going to teach you guys how to reassign the root bone and the bone editing mode. What it is for. Okay, so now we're here. Let me just create bones. Okay. Uh, Over here, I will change the default bone property. I'm just going to leave them to the generic unit, which was zero point 0.5 as before. 0.5, zero point 0.5. Yep, that's fine. Okay, so the main thing that we will do here is the, oh yeah, I had to show you reassign. Okay, click and click and click and just right click. Okay, so we got this little bone chain. I will exit this mode. You guys know that this is the root. So every time I move this, that will move. My bad, Z. Okay, yep. And when I come here and move this, let me just zoom out a little. That won't really like move it. It will only move the children with it, which are the front, but the upper bone at that point remains anchored. This one here is actually just translating that top part, which is connected to it, pretty much like a chain. But in terms of rotation, you will notice that the children don't really rotate. And also when you want to rotate these root nodes, um, you guys need to only select this one, okay? Remember, like, if you want to move that whole bone or the whole character, you will always move the root bone, okay? It moves the whole bone with it, or any item attached to it moves with it, okay? Same with this. When we move this, or if I come here and I move this, okay? Remember, like you will notice that that bone is also moving, but it's actually not. It's anchored right there. This one's connected to it, so our program does not crash because there's a lot of math going behind it. It looks like that bone is moving, but it's not. Like it's anchored. Only this tip point of it is trying to move, and to not break, it's for like trying to calculate that math, so it's moving the point right next to it too. But those points are at rest, this one and that one, okay? So with that done, reassign root means if I click here, this is now the root bone, and you will notice the direction is kind of flipped. Why? Because you will see that this bone here, this can be really helpful if you want to like create a pelvis. For example, we can use the same technique to create the pelvis and the spine bone. Now I will just show it to you right here, and we can like kind of disconnect these bones by deleting it or refining it or something, okay? We can also choose this unlink bone. It will kind of unlink them and give us a spine and a pelvis bone. But I will show you how we can do that. Now we have done reassigning the root. Before this was the root bone, correct? You will notice how this, actually this was one, that's a new added bone. You will notice if I try to move it, our whole thing is moving like a, well, like a blade. This is the root bone now. That means wherever this moves, the whole thing moves. But let's say that I need to assume this is the pelvis bone. I want this to be the root. I will do reassign root. And this is now the root bone, and then we got this, whatever you want to call this. You kind of like get that, okay? But usually the pelvis shape is like this. And another thing I forgot to tell you about the creation of the bone is never create the bone too close to the bone. So let's say I'm here, I choose create bone, and I'm right here. Notice that when I click here, it starts a whole new bone. This is like a separate chain of bone. And if I exit this mode and come here, you will see that I have this bone selected, and that's the root bone for it. Yep, that's the root bone right here. This is a separate chain of bones, and this too is also a separate chain of bones, but it has like these two different uh, two different further hierarchies. Like this is the root bone, and they are linked to it. Hold on, let me zoom out. Yeah, so that's the root bone, and these are like two separate bone chains linked to it. These and these. That means that if I move this, it will move the whole thing together. Okay. These are like why you should know to how to check your hierarchy. Okay. I'm doing this stuff like this so you guys understand. After this video, we will actually start. And now, when I move it, you will notice that the whole thing is moving, but why are those moving? Remember, only this is moving that's linked to it. So, not to break that mathematical calculation, those bones are still at rest. Their orientation still remains. For example, if I select this bone and I kind of rotate this, oh, sorry, that's the root bone, my bad. Yeah. If I choose this bone and I rotate it, you will notice that it's rotating in this axis. And if I show you its pivot, hold on, where is it? Effect pivot point, perspective mode, and zoom it. Wait, let me just close this up. And let me go, yeah, right here. Uh, if you ignore my gizmo symbol and look at the actual orientation, you will notice that the x-axis, this bone, its x-axis is the upper axis, okay? The x-axis is the upper one. The z-axis is right here, like it's actually facing towards us, the front viewport, and the y-axis is right here. So the rotation is on the y-axis here, like when I was rotating it like this in the side viewport, okay? It's like this. So the reason I'm showing this to you is if I go back to the front, the front viewport, and I choose the root bone and move it like before, like the way, sorry, my bad. Yeah, if I move this one, like I'm just gonna move it here, I changed the orientation of the bone, correct? Like before this was up and that. If I move the root bone, the whole thing is still moving with it. But if I choose that same bone that was facing upwards before and come here and back to perspective, and if I show you its pivot again, you will notice that, yeah, my bone might be upside down now because I placed it that way. And but you will notice that the x-axis, it's still here. Like ignore that gizmo icon. You need to see these shapes that are here, these wireframe shapes. Okay, so you will notice its x is still the same, and its rotation is still on the y-axis. So if I rotate it, it will still rotate here. It won't happen here. Now, if you remember when we mirrored those bones for the leg earlier, when we flip the axis, flipping the axis means that you will notice that these are rotating. uh, the flipping axis kind of does this, like it flips the axis to the other side. So we need to reorient this pivot so it moves accordingly, like that wing flapping example I gave you. So that was the reason I gave you that. Okay, so you guys have learned everything, and now next is the bone edit mode that you guys must know about. So when you need to edit bones, we use bone edit mode. For example, some people do this, which kind of frustrates them and they kind of completely quit this. What they do is they grab a bone, they try to move it like this. This is for posing. Remember, when you're not in the bone edit mode, this is called posing the bone, okay? If you want to like pose it or reassign the root and everything, that's called the posing mode. What is bone edit mode? Bone edit mode, it allows you to move the bone manually in any direction. Like you can move it in the X and the Y. You can rotate them and change their orientation if you want to. But rotating them like this is very different. As you can see, the bones become disconnected sometimes like that. You don't want to do like rotate them in the bone edit mode. And you can also scale them. We have the bone resize tools there for a purpose, as scaling them kind of stretches them bigger. That's why we have these options here at the bottom called realign, reset, stretch, and reset scale, bone on and off, flip axis, and all this. These are here for a reason. The scale, stretch, squash, all these. We will learn about those in a bit. The reason I left those out was for a reason. We will start covering them up just really soon. So with this done, next thing we will be doing here, just to know why we need this. So now you guys can edit a bone. For example, when you select it, remember it will always do this at the link, okay? Where the link starts at, it will allow you to edit it right there. Now I'm moving it on 2 axes. Why is my bone kind of moving and stretching? That's because this is the root bone that I'm trying to move and stretch. So, and it's not linked properly to it. It's kind of doing that rotation thing again. You need to be careful about that while making the hierarchy. Oh, sorry, my bad. Yeah. It's like, yeah, it was the root bone I was moving. So you guys need to make sure you don't mess around with the root bone much, and you only use these links, okay? As this root bone is also connected to this bones, so make sure like when you're positioning your bones, they're not linked to anything. Now, uh, let's get actually started now. In the next video, we will start to create our skeleton and learn how to create it. Okay, so I hope it covered up everything. I just wanted to give you like a basic crash course first. Now, the actual tutorial begins in the next video. We will start to rig this little guy here and create the bones and get started, okay? We will create the leg bones and use the bone edit tools for the placement and learn some constraints.